Worcester, England. Darkness fell, streetlights flickered on, and families settled in. But in a house on Gillam Street, a horror was unfolding. 3 innocent lives snuffed out, their killer, a family friend entrusted with their care. This is the story of David McGreavy, the Monster of Worcester, and the night he committed an unspeakable act. On April 13, 1973, David McGreavy, a lodger in the home of Clive and Elsie Ralph, murdered their 3 young children. Paul, 4 years old, Dawn, 2, and 9-month-old Samantha became victims of a horrific crime that shocked the nation. McGreavy, a friend of the couple, was babysitting while they were at work. He brutally killed the children, leaving their bodies impaled on a neighbor's fence. The image of those tiny bodies, displayed so gruesomely, became seared into the public consciousness. This is their story, a story of loss, grief, and the enduring search for answers in the face of unimaginable evil. To understand the monster, we must look at the man. David McGreavy's early life was far from idyllic, marked by instability and familial discord. Born in 1951, McGreavy was the second youngest of 7 children. His family moved frequently, making it difficult for him to form lasting bonds. By most accounts, McGreavy had a troubled childhood. His father, a strict disciplinarian, reportedly resorted to physical punishment. This created a volatile home environment, leaving an indelible mark on young David. He struggled to fit in, both at home and at school. As he grew older, McGreavy's behavioral problems escalated. He was dishonorably discharged from the British Army after setting fire to an army building, a disturbing foreshadowing of the darkness that lay within. The events leading up to the murders remain shrouded in a chilling ambiguity. Clive and Elsie Ralph had taken in McGreavy as a lodger. He had recently been dismissed from his job and had nowhere else to go. On that fateful night, the Ralphs went to work, leaving McGreavy in charge of their 3 young children. McGreavy himself has given conflicting accounts, each more disturbing than the last. He initially claimed that the children had been ill and that he had lost control while trying to quiet them. Later, he would confess to the murders, but his explanations remained muddled and inconsistent. The children's bodies bore the marks of unimaginable cruelty. Paul, the eldest, had been strangled. Dawn had been killed by a single blow to the head. Samantha, the baby, had been strangled with a piece of wire. Their small bodies, broken and lifeless, were then impaled on the metal spikes of a neighbor's fence. The murder sent shockwaves through the community of Worcester. The image of the children's bodies impaled on the fence became seared into the city's collective memory. Fear and suspicion gripped the community. Parents were afraid to let their children out of their sight. Neighbors, once friendly and trusting, now eyed each other with suspicion. The tragedy exposed the fragility of life, the thin veneer of normalcy that can be shattered in an instant. The community struggled to come to terms with the knowledge that such evil could exist in their midst. The impact on the emergency responders was profound and long-lasting. Many officers, haunted by the experience, were forced to take early retirement or sought solace in therapy. The community rallied around the Ralph family, offering what comfort they could. Inside the mind of a killer, exploring the psychological depths. What could drive a man to commit such an act of unspeakable cruelty? This question has haunted investigators, psychologists, and the public alike. Some have pointed to McGreavy's troubled childhood, his history of anger and instability, as potential contributing factors. Others have speculated about possible mental illness, suggesting that he may have been suffering from an undiagnosed personality disorder or psychosis. Psychiatric evaluations conducted after his arrest painted a picture of a deeply disturbed individual. McGreavy exhibited signs of borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. Some experts have suggested that McGreavy's actions might have been triggered by a psychotic episode. The question of McGreavy's mental state at the time of the murders remains a subject of debate. Justice served? The trial and aftermath. The trial of David McGreavy was a media sensation, captivating the nation and fueling public outrage. The prosecution presented a strong case, detailing the horrific nature of the crimes and presenting McGreavy's confessions as evidence of his guilt. The defense argued that McGreavy was not of sound mind at the time of the murders. The jury ultimately rejected the insanity plea, finding McGreavy guilty of all 3 counts of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, with a recommendation that he serve a minimum of 20 years before being considered for parole. The verdict and sentence, while bringing a sense of legal closure, did little to assuage the grief and anger felt by the community and the nation at large. The case sparked a national debate about the adequacy of sentencing guidelines for violent crimes, particularly those involving children. Life behind bars, remorse or resignation. In the decades since his conviction, David McGreavy has remained a shadowy figure, confined within the walls of various high-security prisons. He has been moved multiple times, often for his own safety. Reports from prison officials and occasional interviews with McGreavy himself paint a conflicting picture. Some have described him as a model prisoner, remorseful for his actions and committed to rehabilitation. He has reportedly expressed regret for the pain he has caused. However, there have also been reports of McGreavy exhibiting manipulative behavior. He has reportedly claimed that he has no recollection of the murders. The question of whether a man capable of such cruelty can ever truly change remains a subject of debate. Can evil be redeemed? A question of morality and justice. The case of David McGreavy raises profound questions about the nature of evil, the limits of forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption. Can a man who has committed an act of such unspeakable cruelty ever truly atone for his sins? Is redemption possible for someone who has inflicted so much pain and suffering on others? The concept of redemption is often rooted in religious or spiritual beliefs, suggesting that forgiveness and salvation are possible through divine grace, or through a process of repentance and atonement. From a secular perspective, redemption can be viewed as a process of personal transformation. However, even if we accept the possibility of personal redemption, the question of whether society has an obligation to forgive remains complex and contentious. Some argue that forgiveness is essential for healing, both for the individual and for society as a whole. Others contend that forgiveness should not come at the expense of justice. Preventing future tragedies, a shared responsibility. The murders of Paul, Dawn, and Samantha Ralph serve as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of children and the importance of safeguarding their well-being. While we may never be able to fully prevent such tragedies from occurring, there are steps we can take as a society to minimize the risks. One crucial aspect is fostering a culture of vigilance and awareness. We must be attuned to potential signs of abuse or neglect, both within our own families and in our communities. Creating strong support networks for families is another vital step. Addressing the root causes of violence, such as poverty, inequality, and lack of access to education and opportunity, is also essential. Finally, we must prioritize mental health care and support. Echoes of darkness, remembering the victims, seeking hope. The murders of Paul, Dawn, and Samantha Ralph cast a long shadow, their memory a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. Yet, even in the face of such unimaginable tragedy, there is hope. There is hope in the resilience of the human spirit, in our capacity for compassion, and in our determination to create a better world for future generations. We can honor the memory of Paul, Dawn, and Samantha by working to prevent such tragedies from happening again. We can support organizations dedicated to child protection and advocate for policies that strengthen families and communities. While the echoes of that dark day in April 1973 may never fully fade, we can choose to let the memory of those 3 innocent lives inspire us to create a brighter future. A future where such horrors are consigned to the past, and where every child has the opportunity to live a life free from fear and violence.